Okay, so now when you think of the superintendent of an Iowa school district, you think some guy or gal with an education background. But if some people have their way, maybe you'll hear Colonel Superintendent or General Superintendent or the former CEO of a big company superintendent. We're going to talk about that, about allowable growth and Governor Branstad's reform priorities and a bunch of other education issues with Andrew Rasmussen today on the Fallon Forum.
This is Webcast One Live.
Ed Fallon here, folks. Gateway Market and Cafe is your locally owned source for specialty groceries. Enjoy chef-crafted, prepared foods, artisan baked goods, organic produce, specialty cheeses, and hand-selected wines and craft beer. Visit the lively cafe for breakfast, lunch, or dinner 7 days a week. Gateway Market is centrally located on the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and Woodland Ave. Stop by or visit www.gatewaymarket.com for more details. That's Gateway Market, folks. Good food, great community.
Hello, Mid-American Energy.
I'm very concerned that you want to bill me an extra $5,000 to build a nuclear reactor. Do you know we're in the middle of a recession?
Oh, we were hoping you wouldn't hear about that until after the legislature had taken action.
Why not let your shareholders pick up the tab?
Oh, way too risky for our shareholders. We need you, our loyal customers, to pay for it.
Wait, let me see if I understand this. Mid-American wants to build a nuclear power plant in 10 or 20 years, and they want me to pay for it now?
That's right.
Well, I'll just take my business elsewhere.
Sorry, we're a monopoly. What we say goes.
I've heard nuclear power is more expensive than other sources.
Yes it is.
And I've heard there's no plan for how to dispose of nuclear waste.
We're looking at shooting it into the sun.
Well, I'm not going to sit back and let you make bad decisions with my money.
We're betting you will.
Stop Mid-American's power grab. Call your legislators today. 281-3371. 281-3371.
Paid for by Physicians for Social Responsibility.
Located in the heart of Beaverdale, Tally's offers speedy and affordable rooftop lunch, catering for events both large and small, innovative cuisine, as well as vegetarian and gluten-free menus. Come to Tally's for live music, dry-aged steaks, Sunday brunch, and all-you-can-eat ribs every Monday night. Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering at 2712 Beaver Avenue. Call 279-2067. That's 279-2067.
It's time to think about upgrading the efficiency of your furnace and air conditioner. Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling has provided honest, competent service for over 20 years. Whether it's your home or business, for repair work or to install a more energy-efficient furnace or air conditioner, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422. That's 263-0422. For honest, competent heating and cooling service, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422.
I love driving to Newton to see the races.
Me too, but I only have to drive across town.
You live in Newton?
Yep, Newton's got small town charm and it's close to Des Moines. I love the safe, friendly neighborhoods and family-owned businesses. And Newton's wind energy industry is really taking off.
How'd you find your home?
Dan Kelly with First Choice Realty. And Dan helped me find my office too.
Next time, instead of just speeding by, I'll stop in and check out Newton.
Why don't you check out Newton? Call Dan Kelly at 641-521-9260 or Dan Kelly at mchsi.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Who demands? Huh?
Me.
You, my bike.
I'm the man.
Yeah, there it is, folks. My bike out on a wonderful day here in central Iowa. Neither cold nor wind nor salt nor snow impedes this brave bicycle from tearing down the streets of Des Moines. So, hey, how you feeling?
Well, as good as ever, I suppose.
All right.
It is super chilly, though. I was not expecting it.
Hang in there.
I'll do my best.
All right, folks, we got a lot to talk about today. I do want to get into the inauguration later in the program. I also want to respond to some of my critics regarding the Boswell lawsuit. It's been dropped, but I'm getting a bunch of feedback, and I want to respond to some of that. But first, we have some pretty important issues to address in the realm of education. I want to talk about Branstad's insistence on attending to his reform priorities before dealing with the allowable growth issue. Allowable growth is code word for how much money will the schools have to spend this year. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the CEO change. Well, what do you want to say? There are those inside state government who are proposing that instead of having an educator background, superintendents will be required, or at least allowed, to have a CEO, a corporate CEO background, or even a military background. We'll talk about that too. First, I want to mention the Gateway School issue. That's an issue that is being addressed by the Des Moines Public School District this week. It's an issue that might have equivalent, comparisons in other districts around the state. But basically, this is a school it's a special school, and oftentimes our special schools deal with kids who are having, trouble, struggles. This one is more for folks who, as I understand it, who are the kind of the cream of the crop. It was established to provide access to what's called the International Baccalaureate Program, which was not available in neighborhood schools around the state, around the district. So anyway, the issue is: do you have a school? Does the Des Moines district justify having a school that has such a high concentration of student to teacher? Meaning instead of the usual 25 or so students per teacher, this is a lot less. And some folks are feeling, is that appropriate? Is it fair to the rest of the district? Is it fair to the other schools to have such a favorable concentration? Now, I have mixed feelings about it. I'm delighted to have Andrew Rasmussen in the studio with me. He is with the Des Moines Education Association. Andrew, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me again, Ed.
And I know we want to get into legislative stuff too, but this is an issue that is front and center right now this week in Des Moines. Former school board member Graham Gillette is saying, cut it loose, let it go. I hope to get Graham on the program today, and he did try his hardest, but he could not break away for a conversation. But there seems to be some strong opinions and some ambivalence on both sides, and I share that. I have opinions on both sides. It does seem to me that you don't want to create significant inequities in one building within a school district, that you deny opportunities elsewhere in the district. But on the other hand, were the parents who now have kids at this school sold a bill of goods? Were they told, as some seem to suggest, that this was not just an experiment, not just a temporary arrangement, but it was a permanent commitment on the part of the district to a new approach to providing access to this international baccalaureate program? I mean, what's your take on it in the most general sense?
Right. I think the way I understand it, the way I see these parents, they were told that this was going to be more of a permanent school, at least originally, back when Nancy Sebring was superintendent.
2 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was. And so they understood that, and they do enjoy the smaller class sizes that are available to their kids, and definitely have some advantages there. And it's kind of reflective, I think, if you've been paying attention to the school board this year. There's been many issues that come down to communication between community, parents, and the district, and how well that's working. And so wherever you stand on this issue, you can see that there is, again, another issue of how is this communicated to parents. There seems to be a communications breakdown, and that is causing a lot of anger on the side of the parents. So that's kind of where I see the issue being. It's another example, just like the ML King Jr. Day, Snow Day, of where there's been some communication issues where members of the community are not getting the message for whatever reason from the school district.
And the same could be said around the whole dismissal of Nancy Sebring.
Right, exactly.
So the board, this is a quote from an article in the Des Moines Register this week from a man named David Johns,
right,
who was with the International Baccalaureate. He was the International Baccalaureate Program Coordinator,
correct,
back in 2010 when this first happened. And he says, quote, "What the board is being asked to consider is actually recognizing this as a formal school within the district." I mean, he was formerly with the district,
right?
So he was authorized to say that.
Yeah, I think this was at a school board meeting that he.
And that does sound like you are actually creating. I mean, if you don't create a temporary school without calling it that. I mean, I wouldn't think you'd call it a school. I think you'd call it a program.
Yeah, exactly. So a formal school sounds pretty long-term, in my opinion. Now, what I see as the issue from the other side, I can see both sides.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm kind of standing right there in the middle. The fact that we do have many other middle schools where class sizes are much higher. You've got, if I'm looking at the statistics correctly, Gateway School has 25% gifted and talented. The other middle schools in the district only have 15% of their students gifted and talented. There's a big difference in free and reduced price lunch as well. So,
what is that? Do you know?
I believe it's Gateway is at 46% of their students, and the district average for the rest of the middle schools is 76%. So there's kind of that's the kind of equity that I think you're hearing about, is that equity of why not for the rest of the kids too. And that's kind of where DMEA would come down, as far as if this program is great and works good for these kids, then let's spread it out among all the middle schools. If small class sizes like this are good, and we think they are.
Well, and that's one of Graham Gillette's arguments, is that now that this program is available elsewhere, there's no point in having this program exist in one place where they have some favorable advantages.
Right. And I think that's one of the things I would say, I've mentioned this to school board members, is the Des Moines School District needs to get better. And this is a long-term issue. The Des Moines School District needs to get better at spreading what works in certain schools to all the other schools, because oftentimes we'll see schools that are free and reduced price lunch, high percentage, which is code word for basically students in poverty. They don't always get some of these special programs first. And so that kind of, I think that these kind of programs should be spread to all the kids in the district and be offered to all the kids in the district.
Yeah, and again, we've often, a lot of us have fought for years for getting smaller class sizes.
Right.
And I think that's one of the most appealing things about this school is the small class sizes. So is there a way to work toward accomplishing that, not just district-wide, but statewide? And that has been a focus of some of the conversations at the State House, too, is how do we move toward smaller classes?
Right.
That was a big issue under the Vilsack administration.
And it has to do with financing your schools. And in school districts like Des Moines, where you have high poverty rates, that might mean they get more money than the suburban schools, dare I say it. So it really has to do with the financing that comes from the state, so that we can hire the number of teachers we need to be able to get to those.
Now, are there other districts in the state, maybe even in Story County perhaps, where you've got comparable situations, an investment in a school that is focused on this baccalaureate program, or some comparable advanced placement initiative that are seeing similar conversations?
Well, I know that Des Moines School District is the only one that's offering the IB program.
Statewide?
Yeah, statewide. Okay. So that is unique to Des Moines. But I'm sure that I know that in some other school districts I hear about schools that try to innovate and focus on technology or small class sizes, let's say. And I guess the real issue is finding a way to balance, allowing each community, in a big community like Des Moines, we have a Montessori school, we have the downtown school, we have the IB schools. Finding a way to let schools innovate like that, but also not leaving out the other schools.
Right.
So that's kind of the balance you have to find, is how can we, kind of adjust our schools, transform our schools to fit what each community needs. Yeah. And then we're fighting against the move from the state and national level to standardize everything.
Well, there are some no-brainers out there, and there are some tough calls. This one seems like a tough call. It's a small situation compared to the big scheme of education, finance, and all the other reform conversations we're having. And let's switch to that big picture. Okay. Right now at the State House.
Can I say, though, that
yes,
I do like leaving those tough calls to the school board.
Okay. Well, and part of the issue, as you noted, is communication.
Right.
A better conversation about how this stuff comes down and how people perceive what the intended plan of action is.
I agree.
So speaking of plans of action, Governor Branstad has made it clear that he wants to see his reform priorities given top precedent, top billing, over the conversation about allowable growth. And so folks understand allowable growth is that decision the legislature makes usually every year, sometimes every 2 years, to authorize funding for the K-12 system statewide, based on a formula, again, where some of the poorer districts get certain amounts of, some additional assistance, but it's based on a per pupil, investment. And it's also based on, you calculate to some extent what impact inflation is likely to have on a school's budget. Now, the schools have to have their budget set by, I think, August.
Yeah.
And of course, because the school itself starts in late August. And so the legislature is by statute, that is by law, committed to determining the rate of allowable growth by mid-February. And Governor Branstad saying we're going to prioritize. He wants the legislature to prioritize his reform priorities over allowable growth. And while there seems to be some interest in his reform priorities, I think that insistence has ruffled some feathers at the State House and perhaps elsewhere as well.
Yeah, it seems to be that you see this in congressional Republicans too. It's called hostage taking, and this is apparently their new playbook.
I thought that was an international problem.
Yeah, also they must have learned it from somewhere. But the governor is basically, in my opinion, taking hostage school financing in order to get his reform agenda passed, which he has termed as his legacy. So he's very, very desperate to get his legacy passed, and.
Couldn't one argue he's just being a smart politician? I know people need this. I know this has to happen. So, I'm going to make sure my priority gets first billing.
Right, but he's holding every school in the state of Iowa hostage, basically. The financing for next year right now is we begin negotiation season. So our union will be negotiating with the school district about next year's budget and how much to pay teachers and how much and then the budget, the district's deciding how much to spend on things right now, but they're doing it without any idea how much money is going to come from the state. And so that's a big problem, and the governor's kind of holding that hostage. Meanwhile, we're waiting to figure out what we're going to spend on our schools next year, and he's holding that hostage for his reform agenda, which is $180 million, and we could talk about whether it's
$180 million is his reform.
Right.
And again, allowable growth, the rate of allowable growth is still being negotiated.
Right. I believe
and I believe Governor Branstad, didn't he say he envisioned 0% allowable growth?
We've heard 0%. We've heard, we'll talk about it once you pass my reform agenda, but we've never heard any percent this year. Okay. But he's said 0% in the past. And I've heard that he maybe just wants to get away from even having allowable growth at all.
Now, some people would say, okay, so my family's budget or my small business budget, or my farm's income was the same as last year, 0% change.
Right.
I dealt with that. I lived with that.
Sure.
Why shouldn't we expect our schools to deal with and live with that as well?
Well, as long as everybody that says that is okay with larger class sizes.
Why should that amount to larger class sizes?
Because you still have to pay the teachers that are teaching your students, and if you do not have the money to keep up with inflation, there's got to be cuts somewhere. And this is a very person-heavy business, teaching and education.
Yeah. So what is the, I should know this, what is the rate of inflation projected to be this coming year?
That's a great question.
Or what has it been in the past year?
Does your bike know?
My bike knows lots of things, but the rate of inflation is not something I think it's been able to calculate.
Right. I didn't have that in my notes, but I know that the Senate Democrats...
I appreciate your confidence in my bike.
Right, exactly.
I'm honored, and my bike should be honored as well.
Yeah.
So.
The Senate Democrats have stated last past weekend that they wanted to pass a 4% allowable growth, which we've seen, if we look back, because there's been years where we've had 2% allowable growth, 0% allowable growth. So that has had effects over the last 5 years or so. If I saw somebody, and I'm not going to quote Facebook because I don't even know if this is accurate, but somebody said if we really wanted to catch up, we would have to pass something like 16%.
I have heard that said by school officials.
Right.
And that may be an exaggeration. I don't know, but I do know that back in the early 2000s, when education funding had been cut significantly by the legislature, specifically by House Republicans, because of and again, those were tougher times financially. The tax revenue coming into the state was sour. The economy wasn't doing as well. It was tough to meet the intended, the necessary growth that people expected in the school budget, but still. Yeah, there were those of us who argued the legislature wasn't trying hard enough, and in the end, when the budget scenario improved, we talked about needing 6% to get it back up to the level where we expected the schools to function, sustainably.
Right.
And I remember Vilsack. It was the Iowa School Board Association, the PTAs, the DMEA, the Iowa State Association. Right. It was, and then Vilsack and me.
Yeah.
I was the one person in the House who was clamoring for 6%, and Governor Vilsack.
Right.
It was kind of nice to be on the same page as Governor Vilsack. That happened once in a while in our tenure. But But there wasn't a lot of clamoring for that. And again, I thought the PTA, all those organizations made a good argument for why 6% was needed.
Right.
And a lot of this is about trying to position yourself to get the best possible compromise in the end.
Right.
And I felt that starting at 6%, with the House Republicans talking 2%, we were likely to get to 4%, which was still not adequate to meet the shortfall in the estimate of most people who are on the front line of education.
Sure.
But it was a lot better than the 2% Republicans were proposing. Now, do you remember what happened? Senate and House Democrats decided to push for 4%. And I was arguing against that. So were the organizations that are on the front line. So was Vilsack. They settled on offering 4%, and thus the battle became over 3%. And I think if we'd stuck with 6%, you would have seen the battle over 4%, and that would have done better for our schools back in that time.
Sure, and absolutely. And I think ISCA has said 6% would be a great idea this year. The Senate Democrats have said 4%, and Governor Branstad says pass my education reform. So,
and he's also saying 0%.
Right. Basically,
so, I mean, with that scenario, you're likely to come in the final draw with 2%, maybe 3%, and to me, that's unconscionable in a situation where you've got a $800 million surplus?
Yeah, let's round it up to $1 billion. I think is what.
It's close to $1 billion.
It's close to $1 billion
Yeah.
in surplus, and we're talking a 4% allowable growth would cost. I think it was estimated $135 million.
Right.
Okay, and then if Governor Branstad gets his ed reform passed, that's $180 million. So I mean, we're not taking a big dent out of that surplus. But the governor is dead set against passing any allowable growth, even though it is required by state law.
Yeah, that's my question. What happens if he, or the legislature in this case as well, failed to meet the statutory requirement to set the level of allowable growth by mid-February?
Okay, what do you do with lawbreakers? I mean, really, what should you do?
Do we have a jail big enough for all 150 legislators plus the governor?
I think
is that a doable solution?
Gold top on. I do believe, actually, from what I understand, they failed to set it last year as well. The House Republicans failed to set it last year, so they already broke the law once.
Well, and to be honest with you, they failed to set it on a couple occasions when I was in the state house as well. And once I had, we're being a little bit flippant about the suggestion about incarcerating lawmakers for failing to meet their own law. But I did offer an amendment back in 93 or 4 to fine every lawmaker $25 per day for every day late.
Right.
And I was surprised at how angry people were at me for making that
Really?
proposal.
I like that idea. We could give the money to the kids. Just send it to the schools.
I mean, my own party was mad at me. I came back with a counter proposal. I said, well, maybe we should since the majority party controls the debate, maybe we should just penalize the majority party. And Democrats didn't like that much either, actually. But it was a little more palatable than fining every member.
Right.
But
and the thing is that I think up on the Capitol, they don't understand, or they should understand, but they're not understanding that, as I said, this is negotiation time. This is budget setting time for schools. We're already seeing in the paper school superintendents saying they're going to have to issue layoff notices and plan cuts in certain programs because they do not know whether there's going to be 0, 4, 6, whatever. And so they have to start pink slipping people this spring.
And again, I understand the conversation about a mere 2% allowable growth, again, which is below the rate of inflation in most years, in tough budget times. It's hard to understand why that is even on the table in a time when, as you noted, we have nearly $1 billion in surplus in the state. And that's a lot of money in a $6.5 billion budget, roughly.
I think it's
a lot of money.
The governor is, like I said, he's desperate to get his legacy reform agenda passed. He didn't get much passed last year. And so this is his second chance at getting some big education reform legacy passed, and he sees this as an opportunity to kind of force the hand of the Democrats in the Senate and House.
Well, folks, we got one more education issue to discuss here. We're going to take a short break. Andy, you can stick around with us for a while.
You're going to hold me hostage?
We're going to hold you hostage. My bike has you pinned to the chair. We're going to talk about the discussion going on at the state capitol right now regarding requirements for qualifications for superintendents. Historically, and according to the rules that are use to guide this conversation. Superintendents need to have an education background. The conversation now is shifting to whether it would be adequate to be the former CEO of a corporation or a military general or colonel or leader of some type. Is that adequate? Is that what we feel should be allowed in terms of selecting a superintendent? And that's an important conversation probably in a lot of Iowa's 300-plus school districts, but it certainly is an important conversation in the Des Moines district because that search is beginning very shortly. We'll talk with Andy about that when we come back shortly, folks, here on the Fallon Forum. And
from the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
The dawn of a new era begins.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of WebcastOneLive.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
Hey folks, it's Ed Fallon. I want to tell you about saving energy and saving money. Tim Reynolds with Reynolds Energy Solutions will give you a comprehensive energy audit that will cost you nothing. And Tim will identify the many ways in which you can reduce energy use while saving money. Now, I had Tim over for an audit last month, and I was amazed, I tell you, at how much energy was going through the roof, out the windows, the back door. You get it. So before the cold winds of winter really blow hard, give Tim a call at 802-2801. That's 802-2801.
I'm a burrito.
I'm a fighting burrito, full of fresh ingredients prepared before your very eyes.
I don't have eyes.
I have over 28 options and 268 million combinations, including Rizo for vegetarians.
I can take my meat off and call myself vegetarian.
Put that back on. The Fighting Burrito is locally owned.
I'm owned by some big corporation somewhere. Say, you want to go on a date?
No thanks. I'm seeing a quesadilla.
The Fighting Burrito, online fightingburrito.com. Join the fight.
Since 1994, Sid's Catering has graced Des Moines area events with quality service and rave reviews. Owner Sid Cohn's culinary career began with a Northeast Iowa vacation home for international clientele. Sid earned a Bachelor of Science in Hotel Restaurant Management and was the assistant clubhouse manager at Des Moines Golf and Country Club. Sid has a passion for fresh, local products and offers a wide range of options, including vegan, gluten-free, and ethnic. Mention the Fallon Forum when you book your breakfast or lunch event and get 10% off. Contact Sid's Catering at 208-2091. That's Sid's Catering at 208-2091. On March 28th, Equal Justice After Hours is Iowa Legal Aid's annual fundraiser that helps provide access to justice for low-income Iowans. The event includes a reception and program at the Temple for the Performing Arts in Des Moines. It also includes remarks by Georgetown University law professor Peter Edelman and the induction of Robert Oberbilling into the Iowa Legal Aid Hall of Fame. Tickets start at $50 and sponsorship opportunities are available. Contact Terry Bennett at tbennett@iowalaw.org. That's tbennett@iowalaw.org.
Nestled in the heart of downtown, Ritual Cafe is one of Des Moines' most unique places, offering a wide variety of coffee and tea. Ritual Cafe also serves the only all-vegetarian menu in town. And Ritual Cafe is a cultural hub for artists and musicians, with a performance stage hosting local, national, and international talent. Make Ritual Cafe a part of your daily ritual. On 13th Street between Locust and Grand in downtown Des Moines. And check out ritualcafe.com.
Community CPA is the 15th largest CPA firm in Iowa, providing audit, tax, and accounting services. Community CPA specializes in international tax treaty and double taxation avoidance among countries and states. 9 dedicated, experienced, hardworking staff are the company's foundation, and their compassion towards every client is the secret behind Community CPA's success. At Community CPA, you can expect quality service year-round. Call 288-3188. Community CPA, 3816 Ingersoll. Experience the difference.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whoa, fun with computer mice, I tell you. I'd like to thank the Sierra Club and the Iowa chapter of Physicians for Social Responsibility for sponsoring this program. And I'd like to thank Gateway Market for sponsoring the first segment of the show. I had dinner at Gateway Market with a friend yesterday. And some people say, well, those health food stores are too expensive. We had a fantastic meal for $17. A hot dinner with 2 vegetables, main course, and a bottle of wine. For $17. It was great. Gateway Market, folks, 20th and Woodland, not just a great cafe, of course, but also a great grocery store. And a lot of their stuff comes from Iowa farms and local sources. So check them out, folks, at Gateway Market at 20th and Woodland in the Sherman Hill neighborhood. We are going back to our conversation with Andrew Rasmussen. He's the head of the Des Moines Area Education Association, or just Des Moines Education Association.
Yeah, Des Moines Education
Association. I added
an
extra vowel in there.
That's okay.
Apologies.
That's all right.
And we're talking about an issue of statewide interest. It's the issue about the qualifications for a superintendent. And now I'm looking at the conversation in the paper recently under the title, Iowa Licensing Board to discuss letting non-educators become school superintendents. Under this proposal, industry and military leaders, corporate CEOs and military leaders, would be eligible to lead Iowa school districts under a recommendation being discussed by the State Board of Educational Examiners. This was a discussion last week, which now, I understand, Andy, has been proposed, or postponed, rather.
Yes, it's been delayed to get more input and to have more discussion, and then I think March 14th is when they are going to bring it back up again. But it was on the fast track because our Department of Education Secretary, Jason Glass, really wanted to get going on this as one of his exciting reforms. And basically, you or your bicycle might be able to be a superintendent too, because basically the rule was anyone with 5 years experience in the leadership of an organization. That's the quote. So,
anyone with 5 years experience leading an organization.
Yes.
So when I was the the executive director of 1,000 Friends of Iowa. That might have
That
qualified
could
me.
count. Did you do it for 5 years?
I did.
You could be a superintendent under this.
I don't know if
proposal.
my bike can claim any similar accomplishment.
You might want to check because it'd be very interesting to have her as a. Does your bike have a gender? I called it.
Yes,
her.
my
Yeah,
bike.
okay.
My bike is a gal.
Maybe
Yeah.
she should put in an application for the Des Moines school superintendent. But yeah, so that was the idea.
You what?
I've owned the roads for 17 years. I've got this.
Actually, it's more like 27 years. So stop lying about your age. Well, that's even. I mean, when I first heard this, I thought, okay, they're looking for CEOs of big corporations because of the whole notion that, well, we've got to run government like a business.
Yes, we hear that all the time. Yes, we have to run schools like a business to make them more efficient. And this is that is the intention. Is in some other states they have allowed for people from the military or CEOs to take over a school district, or for example, in New York or Los Angeles, they've allowed mayors to take over a school district.
Really?
That's a whole other argument. They declare the school district failed, and then the mayor takes over and starts running things the way they want, with a lot fewer rules on what they can do. But the director of the State Department of Education said this is a proven winner and it will make a difference. And we have yet to find any research that shows this is something that will, transform the lives of children and make schools any better. What it does do is it allows, it brings in that top-down corporate style management system, which is what some people think is needed for schools.
So now the current rule, again, this is a rule that is managed by the Department of Education,
Correct.
the Iowa Department of Education.
The Board of Educational Examiners.
Right, and that rule specifies that a superintendent, a candidate for superintendent, must have a certain amount of education background.
Correct. Education background and must take coursework to get an administrative license in the state.
Okay.
So that's currently the rule, and they want to do away with that to allow for these alternative people to come in. And this, to me, as an educator, we already have it bad enough with people who have so-called experience in education. I can't imagine how much worse it will be when we have someone who has maybe the last educational experience they had was when they were in school, and they're trying to come in and tell us how to do our jobs and how to run the system.
Are they trying to run it like a business and or a military platoon? I mean, what is really the goal here?
Well, I think the goal when they mention CEOs and generals is to try to run it like a top-down type hierarchy where they think, because a lot of ed reform is based on this idea of let's standardize everything and then let's make sure every teacher is doing the exact same thing. And well, top-down, you would think maybe that would be the way to go if you're trying to create that kind of system. But to a teacher on the ground, teaching every day, to me, it's more of an insult in that you're saying, well, anyone can do it. Anyone can be a superintendent. They don't need to know what it's like in a classroom. They don't need to know what it's like to be, teaching every day. Just anyone can do it. And that's kind of disrespectful, I think, to the profession of education.
Yeah, I imagine that not only your association, but the Iowa State Education Association has some reservations about this.
Big reservations, yes, we do. Although Director Glass calls us the education establishment. We're threatened by this. We're not threatened by it.
He calls you the education establishment?
Yes. We're the education
and that's
establishment.
that's not a compliment, I take it.
No, he doesn't call it. He for some reason thinks that we are against this because we're afraid of change, and that has nothing to do with it. It is the fact that we want people in those positions who understand what it's like to be in a classroom and what happens in the classroom day to day.
Well, we just had a very prominent symposium. Maybe that's the right word here in Central Iowa.
Pep rally.
What?
Maybe it was a pep rally.
A pep rally where I'm not sure how many educators were involved, but it was something sponsored by, organized by, kind of staffed by the business community,
Correct.
The Chambers of Commerce, and Governor Branstad, to look at the role of business in education.
Right. And the basic idea was that I think Governor Branstad was trying to get the local business community, let's call it the corporate business community, behind his reforms and be able to go up to the state capitol and help lobby and push for that. That was really the intention of it.
That's not. I mean, that's not so bad in itself to get businesses involved with supporting education.
Right, absolutely. You can. I've had a discussion over the last couple of weeks since that symposium. I talked to a couple local businessmen, small business people about what would they want to see in schools, because I think it's important to get their perspective.
Right.
But this was more the way I understand it. We weren't invited. Teachers were not invited. The ISEA was not invited to attend.
I mean, just not invited.
Right. There were formal invitations.
Did you ask if you could go?
Well, supposedly it was open invitation. You got to pay $35. But the Iowa School Boards Association was invited formally. The teachers were not. So there was not a lot of education. And it was also held from 9:30 to 3 o'clock, which is very difficult.
Oh, that might be class time? Maybe?
Yeah, class time when we're doing our job. It was very difficult for teachers to attend in the first place. So it wasn't really a conversation between the business community and educators. It was more a conversation between the business community and Governor Branstad's administration.
Which is really what it was designed to be.
Absolutely.
Okay. So again, I think some would say, okay, well, getting the business community involved, supporting programs that are important to students. Maybe some of them have a professional angle. That's all good. But there are others who are very much concerned that corporations are interested in taking over public education. Right. And you've seen, I mean, some argue that, again, you see that happening piece by piece with voucher programs, with charter schools, with online education.
Right.
That there are more and more ways in which the camel's nose or the herd of camel's noses are finding its way under the tent, with the ultimate goal of privatizing K through 12 education. I mean, some are arguing that and would point to this pep rally, as you called it, the symposium, as another step in that direction. Is that fair, or is that overstating the intentions of the people who organized this event?
Well, I have since met with two of the people who organized the event. One of the organizers was the Greater Des Moines Partnership. So just last Friday, I had a meeting with two of their leaders to discuss kind of what I saw as the important issues in education compared to what they heard at the Business Summit. So there are people that will profit from any privatization of education. For example, the governor's proposal that he's pushing right now has an expansion of online learning from currently it's limited to 500 students in the state. He wants to move that to, I think, 7,000.
Is it 500? I thought it was less than that. It's 500.
Something around there.
So that's a lot.
He wants to expand it, which means more money for the companies that will provide
right now,
that.
because online learning is, it's hosted by two rural school districts currently, correct? But it's a private corporation that runs the program, and they're the one that receives the money.
Right. Private out-of-state corporations.
Private out-of-state corporations. Yes. They receive about $6,000 per pupil?
Yeah.
And how much of that goes to the hosting district, the actual school district?
I believe the company, I saw a statistic, 98% goes to the company, and then the 2% goes to the school district. So most of the money, the majority of the money, goes to the corporation that's running the online school.
So they get like $100?
Almost, yeah.
120?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
wow.
And now it is kind of lifeline for some of those schools to stay open.
$120, that's not a lot.
Well,
Yeah. Okay. So was that? I'm curious. Was that initiative at all evident in this this pep rally?
I think that was it's one of those minor ones that he slipped in there, but it was one of the things that was talked about. But really, from what I understand, and of course I was following it on Twitter, it was really kind of ginning up the concern about this crisis we have in education, about the test scores, and are we competitive with other countries? That is always what reformers do first, is to get people freaked out about the crisis in education, and then, and here is the governor's proposals. The biggest centerpiece of that proposal is the teacher leadership model, which would, we don't. Well,
you start with the premise that things are failing, things are not working, the schools are horrible. I mean, I've heard other talk show hosts on commercial radio refer to Iowa schools as pagan, rat-infested pagan traps and so I can't quite remember but I know rat-infested and pagan were in the fruity description of Iowa schools.
I miss Steve Days. Go on.
Well, it's so you have this very, very intentional effort to try to move money from the public sector to the private sector, and you start by denigrating the integrity of that structure.
Right.
And I can speak generally, of course. I can also speak anecdotally. I'm the proud parent of 2 kids who went through the Des Moines public school system, and they did really, really well. They are doing very, very well as adults, both as people and professionally.
In fact, I think one of them survived my class. So,
well, and that is a huge accomplishment. Okay, just one. Okay, I thought maybe they both went through your.
I think I
pagan rat infested trap of a class. Yes. No. But no. Back to the main issue here, the conversation about qualifications for superintendents. Was this symposium that, again, Branstad put together with the business community during class time, so teachers couldn't be participating, and really teachers weren't even invited. Was that is that somehow connected to this effort by Jason Glass with the Iowa Department of Education to change the whole way in which superintendents are qualified and thus, hired?
Well, I think what Director Glass is bringing up, it seems it's almost like a Me Too kind of thing that they've got going here, because I see other states pushing these bad reform ideas that have not been proven to do anything to improve student learning, and they really are just desperate to get something passed in Iowa so that they can get noticed too. And we have not passed a lot of the education reforms that a lot of the other states have passed, which I think is a good thing, because most of those reforms have been a bad idea. And so it almost to me is more like they really just want to get some kind of reform passed so that they can, say, hey, we did it too.
So who's behind it? It sounds like it's a national effort.
Well, I can say that I know locally there have been some school board members and community members who would like to see the pool for the Des Moines schools superintendency opened up to other people besides, people that would qualify. And so I know that they've pushed that, but it would be very rare for something that somebody in Des Moines wants to be pushed by the state. That's always a problem. So I think this is a matter of they see corporate America as the model that we need to go to. And now they're making that decision without talking to teachers, parents, students at all. And so they just see this as a way to help streamline things. And if you have a general barking orders at the teachers, maybe they'll follow better rather than try to think for themselves.
Well, we've had enough of that going on. Right, lately,
I
Andy.
know.
No more thinking for yourself.
I'll try to stop.
And thanks for ruining my kid's life.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, actually, they're both doing very well. And again, thank you for your service. Good luck with your work, folks. Andrew Rasmussen with the Des Moines Education Association. We're going to keep tracking education closely at the State House this year. It's obviously a very important conversation, and it is a big chunk of the state budget. And already some significant divisions, some fissures opening up between Governor Branstad and some of those in the Iowa House and Senate. So we'll keep track of how that goes. I do want to talk a little bit about, I got to give you kind of the wrap up on the Boswell thing. And I promise, I didn't think I was going to talk about it today, but I've had some interesting responses. So I just want to share those. But first, I do want to compliment President Obama on a successful campaign and again, a successful inauguration. I didn't watch a lot of it. I've got too much to do, but sounds like it was a fun time. I did note that when I suggested that it was inappropriate to hold Inauguration Day on a national holiday, about 90% of my friends disagreed. Friends and daughter disagreed. It's your fault, Andy.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So, anyway, beyond that, it was clearly quite a day in Washington, D.C. And I'm looking at some of the quotes from President Obama's speech. We have always understood that when times change, so must we, that fidelity to our founding principles requires new responses to new challenges, that preserving our individual freedoms ultimately requires collective action. That's good stuff. That's a kind of quote that might find its way into the history books. And it also, again, underscores, I think, some of the one of the key themes of this administration is we've got to work together. And I think more and more people realize that. But, you've got some, again, I'm an equal opportunity critic, folks, but I do know there are some in Congress who they seem to make sport out of just trying to tank the initiatives of the other party, and that just that has to stop. That's not going to get us anywhere, whether it's in Washington D.C. in the U.S. Congress or here at the state legislature. Okay, so what else did Obama say yesterday of note? He said, "My fellow Americans." Okay, I'm thinking, well, Richard Nixon? No, it is Obama. "My fellow Americans, we are made for this moment, and we will seize it as long as we seize it together." Again, the key word there is together. He's really, really pushing the theme of working together, of cooperating, of bipartisanly, not a word, but I'm going to stick with it, moving forward. The president also said in his speech, "Our journey is not complete until our gay brothers and sisters are treated like anyone else under the law. For if we are truly created equal, then surely the love we commit to one another must be equal as well." That is probably the most historic comment in his inauguration speech. And that has got to send ripples of joy among all those who are either gay or lesbian or believe in equality. And I've been fighting for equality for 3 decades for that community, even though I am not a member. I just have never understood why they have been treated differently. And the fact that it's actually mentioned in his speech, significant, historic, and probably, I give it 5 or 10 years at most before no one even cares anymore, where the GLBT community are afforded the full set of rights that the rest of us have benefited from for a long time. One more quote. He says, "We will support democracy from Asia to Africa, from the Americas to the Middle East, because our interests and our conscience compel us to act on behalf of those who long for freedom." I like that. I just hope that doesn't mean we're going to expand our military adventures in certain countries, in certain parts of the world. Certainly, I think there are a lot of us in this country, the majority, in fact, who would like to see an end to the war in Afghanistan sooner rather than later, and would like to see us pull out of areas where we are already involved with drone warfare, for example. So again, overall, a really great speech and a good event. And interestingly, the responses to it from even those on the far right, for example, Representative Steve King here in Iowa, quote, "This is a day for unity, so I don't want to pick it apart too much." Now, Steve King biting his tongue, that's impressive. And here's Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich said, "While there were, quote, 1 or 2 sentences that conservatives may find objectionable, the speech overall was classically American." Gingrich said, "I thought it was a good speech," adding that he planned to send out the text of the speech in his newsletter on Tuesday. That'd be today, or yesterday if you're listening in Ames. "Obviously, I would have preferred to have made the speech," he joked. Well, yeah, that's cute. So anyway, I guess we should expect that an inauguration is not going to be a time for partisan wrangling. But I am under no doubt that the partisan wrangling will resume and will unfortunately probably be pretty ugly. But again, maybe Obama's call for more civil exchange and more cooperative lawmaking will receive some serious consideration. Okay, finally, before we call it a day here, folks, I want to talk about this lawsuit. Again, to refresh folks' memory, back in 2008, when I announced I was going to run for Congress, the very next day, Leonard Boswell sent somebody who was not active in his administration, with his staff, but was connected, came as an emissary from Congressman Boswell, and asked me not to run, and said Congressman Boswell would offer me a job. And there were a couple other things he was willing to offer. So I was like kind of shocked, but I agreed just for interest's sake to meet with a former high-ranking official with Boswell's congressional staff the next day. Or it wasn't the next day, it was the day after. My ex-wife, my wife at the time my fiancée at the time was there at both those 2 meetings. And in the second meeting, it was made clear anything else was not going to be considered. But the main point of what Boswell wanted to offer me not to run was a job doing some kind of constituent service for $80,000 a year. I mean, that was clear. That was emphatic. I was kind of shocked and appalled. It said no, obviously, and decided not to really make an issue of it in my campaign because I wanted to focus on issues like the war in Iraq, like the Patriot Act, environmental stuff, climate change, labor issues, campaign finance. So I intentionally avoided talking about it, but I have not avoided mentioning it to people over the years. I've mentioned it frequently. But when I mentioned it on, September 24th last fall, it apparently came at bad timing. It was part of my reason for saying why we should not, why I was not going to support Boswell and why I was going to write in Frank County. So anyway, I was surprised that I got sued. I was surprised that Boswell didn't drop the lawsuit right after the election, and surprised that he continued to pursue various legal maneuvers. And I was surprised last Thursday when he dropped it. So I'm thinking, okay, that's all good. It doesn't surprise me that he's claiming in his press release that he he feels like he's vindicated. Well, I guess I say the same thing. Why would they drop it if they felt they had a case against me? Again, there are 3 witnesses to my story on this, so I'm very happy with the way things have turned out, because I really didn't need the headache of having to continue to go through this. I didn't need to. I mean, the having to raise money to defend myself for somebody who lives, on a fairly tight budget, that was a challenge. So I'm glad it's all done. I guess that's one thing Leonard Boswell and I can agree on. I am surprised at some of the comments I've gotten, and this one was particularly interesting because it was accidentally sent to me. This is somebody who receives my email, sent a response to a friend named Jim, and accidentally sent it to me instead, which is delicious, I suppose. She writes, I get this newsletter regularly, my update. My first thought was, well, maybe you, Ed, should think before you speak and, quote, what did you expect? Well, I try to think before I speak, but that's the nature of the beast. Sometimes your brain gets ahead of your tongue. On the whole, she says, I'm pretty much in agreement with what he is interested in, but I'm not quite sure what his mission in life is, and I didn't like it at all that he was appealing to others for money to cover his defense. See, that to me is, people who have money are totally unaware of how difficult it is to defend yourself in the legal in a legal proceeding if you don't have money. I talk to people all the time who are court-appointed attorneys. I know some court-appointed attorneys who do fantastic jobs. Others who are just holding a place, they don't really want to do it. They're stuck with it. And as a result, the client gets horrible representation. I was determined not to let that happen. I went out and appealed to people who understand the value in part of this is I'm challenging a system that is just rife with corruption, where people offering things for money, offering jobs for silence. That's a common occurrence. It needs to be challenged. So yeah, I think we all had an interest in seeing this conversation occur. Anyway, so yeah, I have no trouble with appealing to others for donating. And the bottom line, if you don't like it, if you don't feel that I should be appealing for people to help, support the lawsuit, don't donate to it. Nobody was forced to donate money to help with my legal defense. I don't know of anybody who was made to give me a check or write some cash or donate some cash to the process. Anyway, she says, and I think the money which was left over should go to Kids Against Hunger rather than to his talk show. Okay, well, Kids Against Hunger, I never heard of it, but I'm sure that's a great cause, and that's your cause, and I've got a lot of causes, and I could certainly donate to a lot of those causes, but the one thing that all the people who donated to my legal defense fund have in common is they like what happens on this program. They know I'm giving voice to crazy people like Andy Rasmussen. No, Andy's a great guest. But I'm giving voice to people who don't get their concerns heard in the mainstream press, who don't get their opinions discussed on commercial radio. So yeah, I think it's a logical place to direct it. It's not right for him to profit from the whole situation. Oh my gosh, yeah, profiting from the situation. The last thing I've done is profit from this situation. If anything, I have lost money. I have lost time. I've tried to fight a good fight for a cause that I think has to be fought. And to suggest that I'm profiting from this somehow, oh, come on. Please. Okay, so what else? He should be happy to be off the hook. Okay, we agree on something. I am happy to be off the hook. And you know what? Boswell ought to be happy to be off the hook too, because I know what the truth is in this. Okay, period. And the money really isn't his to keep. Again, people contributed to a legal defense to keep my tush out of trouble, and for a cause that is much broader than that, as I've indicated. And these are folks who, for the most part, are part and parcel of supporting this program. I don't know what her beef is. Totally my opinion, but I did think it through before I wrote. Aha, she thought it through. She thought it through before she wrote, but she didn't think it through before she pushed send and sent it to me accidentally. So anyway, I thought that was both interesting and a little bit entertaining. My response, well, I just kind of shared my response. What else? Here's another one. Let's see. This one that says, oh gosh, there's too much to share here. But somebody accusing me of being self-serving and having lame reasons for wanting to direct the money from that's left over to this. So again, a lot of it seems to focus on that, which I don't understand at all, because again, there are big issues behind this whole conversation, and that is what do we expect from government? Do we expect government officials to act with integrity, to act responsibly, to act above the board? How often does this go on? Probably a lot more often than we know. And again, we've seen, it's not just Congress. We've seen situations. Maybe some of you might remember the Iowa Trust scandal at the Iowa State House. Again, look at the situation with some of the things that have happened in Des Moines, in the Des Moines School District, too, around the whole firing of Nancy Sebring. There are issues here that are bigger than any one particular lawsuit or any one particular ethics complaint or any one particular situation involving money and public trust being abused by an elected official to leverage power and power over someone else. Anyway, that's all I have to say about it, folks. We are moving on. There's one last thing that will happen regarding this lawsuit, and that is that all of you who supported the effort in any way, whether you helped organize one of the two events, whether you played music at it, whether you were one of the great comedians that participated, or whether you donated time or money, I'm going to have a massive pancake brunch feed, and you're going to get so full on pancakes, you're not going to know what hit you. That's going to happen sometime in the near future, folks. We'll have a conversation about that when the time is ready, probably closer to spring. Anyway, thank you so much for sticking around for the conversation. Again, I want to thank Andy Rasmussen with a Des Moines Education Association for being my guest today. I want to thank you all for sticking around for the conversation. More on this in the future, folks. But just saying, thanks for sticking around. Talk to you soon. And I do want to thank Reynolds Energy Solutions for being a sponsor of this program. Reynolds is the brainchild of Tim Reynolds at ReynoldsEnergySolutions.com. He'll do an audit for you for free. And out of that audit, you'll probably learn things that you can do to save money and save energy. So give him a shout, folks. I'll be back tomorrow.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I am administrative mmanager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's gotta be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
If you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.